Okay, so I had a conversation with my dad that was heartbreaking, but I used it. And maybe if you're like a Patreon supporter or one of a very select few, you've seen it, or if my dad had changed his mind. So I guess in case I'm actually, oh yeah, because I am actually publishing this well before my father passes away. So basically, I had a phone call. When you have an important idea, when you have an idea that you think is important, and when and I really have a good feeling about it. I feel quite confident in it, not in its truth, but in its value. When you have that, and you have a history of bipolar disorder, and you've been diagnosed bipolar disorder, even if you've never had a manic episode, well, you have to wonder, is this your first manic episode? So yesterday, I feel like I figured, now I get everything. Not literally, but there's just a magic in the coherence. And yeah, I guess if I'm using words like magic, but it's just, I feel very good about this. And you can watch my birthday live stream to learn more about it. So you have to wonder, is that just in my head? Am I saying nonsense? Talk to other people about the idea. People who maybe aren't in the best position to evaluate it often like it. Well, when I've spent the time to explain it. If I haven't, well, it's revolutionary, so they don't, but no, the premises, they accept the premises. If they are in a position, to evaluate it, so like at a critical thinking conference, it's split. But hey, it's a cool idea. But no, there are some people who are like, oh, okay, that's a really good way to put it. It's a really good understanding of it. And some people who are already straight up saying it, by the way. And I forget, like, I feel like I don't stress that enough. I could very well sound manic if I don't stress it. This isn't really my idea. I want to take credit for something in the assembly of it, but the pieces really aren't mine. I am not the first person to think of the idea of multiple selves, and then to want to just completely break the notion of self, and to see what that means for responsibility, for morality, for perception, etc., for socializing. But I don't think that anyone is unifying it in the way that I am, and giving us the language to talk about it in the way that I am. And maybe someone is, but whatever, I'm doing it. So long as I haven't seen that. Got really off topic. So we didn't actually. So the history of bipolar is the male paternal figure, having possibly had an episode. That's how I remember it being described by other not participants, not occupants. What am I trying to say? By others present, whatever. But we've never talked about it. So he had an idea that was going to win him the Nobel Prize, that explained everything, something about the golden ratio and the veins of leaves and all this. So obviously, a great deal of concern to me, because I'm right there where he was. I'm like, oh wow, holy shit. I think it's going to fix all the world's problems. I mean, so obviously I need to call people and be like, hey, so What would we think? And my dad was, when I was talking about the importance of my idea, he was, saying, okay, important ideas are relativity, important ideas are natural selection, things like that. And I said, yeah, I want to put mine up there. I want to put mine right up there. And he said, I said, how do I know whether it's mania or actually a good idea? I'm going to get the order of the conversation. This is yesterday's conversation wrong a little bit, but he said that if I want to know whether I'm manic, I need to have a list of questions about my behavior, and then a checklist or something, and then go through those as objectively as possible. By the way, which is so perfect that he says that, objectively as possible. I don't believe that exists. That is my whole thing. That is an illusion when we think we're putting on our reasonable cap. And it's such an absurd idea. I mean, you see that that's absurd. This idea that a manic person would self-diagnose. That a crazy person would self-diagnose. I mean, it's just not useful. It's not a useful instruction. Somebody else would need to answer the questions. We didn't get to in that conversation what the questions would be, but we got to some interesting questions in the next conversation. But anyway, so he said as far as people having big ideas, there are a lot of crackpots, there are very few Einsteins. And I said, so how do I categorize myself? Or I phrased it intentionally. What is the most worthwhile way for me to categorize myself? Or something like that. Because maybe the truth isn't important in a case like that. And we're going to see that when we talk about the other questions. The truth matters in all things, maybe except sort of the personal future. Like, all NBA players needed to behave as though they were going to become NBA players, regardless of what the probabilities were. So it's not I'm not interested in estimating my future and evaluating my future. I'm interested in order to have the best. Well, then you have to evaluate it. Hold on, is there a way to avoid saying that? In order to no, it's just because I might as fucking well. I might as well go for the NBA. Just in case I do make it. Because maybe the improbability, maybe that's enough. Right. Because how do you judge the value of something? In economics, they say the probability times the utility. So maybe the probability of me making it into the NBA or me being up there, okay, I don't want to say me being up there with Einstein, but yes, my idea being up there with, I want to say, I prefer natural selection. And you know what? Me up there with Darwin. No, because I didn't do any of the field work. Okay. But it's somewhere up there. Marx? So what was I saying? So, fuck. There are a lot of crackpots. I said, how should I categorize myself? He said, well, you're no Einstein. And then I made a mistake. I said that if you do a Google search, just as a little fact, that Einstein's IQ is actually rated as lower than mine. That's not true, because then when I did a Google search in a later call, I saw that is not the case. So what do I do? And I think that's it for the first call. I think that's it for oh yeah, I didn't finish. Nobody sees me except for you. So I think that that's it for the first call. I definitely think I'm missing something, but I've got one voice saying that that's it. Got one voice saying we're missing something. So we're gonna move to the second call because he had to go. Um, so I mentioned again, yeah, I think my idea could save the world. He said, oh yeah, when you start talking like that, you gotta, be careful. And I said, so are we saying that there are no ideas that have saved the world? And he listed a few. And I said, right. And so is it possible for mine to be one of those? He said, oh, I don't know about that, buddy. He said that, oh, it was so insulting. He talks about, and he's calling me Francis, and he talks about how for an idea to, your idea would need to, like, is there any evidence for it? And he's talking to me about the value of evidence or empiricism, which is E, the first letter of my name. And so I reminded him, hey, what's my name? He said, Eris, sorry, but he didn't see that. So it's funny that there's that value, that he's preaching that value to me. And of course, just because it's my name doesn't mean that I always live by it. But I do. I've got so much evidence. I talk about this stuff all the time. And maybe I don't share or delineate enough the evidence. But I'm always citing experiments and stuff. So we should do that together. We should look at, what do I think my evidence is? Okay. And then he said, and also, it has to, it has to be logical. It has to. So I helped him define that as being internally coherent, so that no part of the theory conflicts with another, and then also consistent with what we already know about the world. If your whole thing depends on the idea that trees exhale carbon dioxide, then there's a problem. And so then I was like, okay, so, because it wasn't that organized, the conversation, so I said, okay, so here's where we're at. There needs to be evidence for it, and it needs to be reasonable. It needs to fit with what we understand about the world. Heart's broken that he hasn't already heard the evidence, but whatever. Maybe that's me imagining saying it. So, but then he has a response for that. His response to the first thing about that there should be evidence for it is, a lot of really great ideas didn't have empirical evidence for them until well after the conception of the idea. Things that we were like in these equations. Wait, the only way for these equations to work with all the stuff that we know is for this to be true. But that would mean that something exists that produces that. Whoa, and then years later they find it. So he said that, some of the best ideas, the most important ideas in the world, they don't have. And I thought that this was to be encouraging. I thought this was to be encouraging. And now I can't remember how it wasn't, but I swear it wasn't. But when I first was hearing him say that, I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I know how. And then in response to that it has to be reasonable, he said the best ideas sometimes are, well, they're, by definition of being revolutionary, they oppose our current paradigm, and they upend everything. And so I was like, okay, so these are my 4 things that I'm going to evaluate my idea with. Is there evidence for it? Is there empirical evidence for it? Does it fit with our current understanding? And if it's a great idea, there might not be evidence for it, and it might oppose our current understanding. Which sounds like a contradiction. And it also sounded all like, criteria that my idea wouldn't meet. You know, just the I wish I could show you this video, but just like, I mean, he would have to have evidence, and yeah. So, all right. So what I wanted, so I said something we would talk about later. It was something about the evidence. There might not be. Yeah, and then think about objectively. I don't remember. Okay. So I sent these messages to my girlfriend. We can take what my dad said and break it up into 2 categories. 1, to know if an idea is correct. There must be evidence. B, it must fit into our current understanding. And this is well-established philosophy of science stuff, now that I write it out. 2, the second category. The most worthwhile ideas that should be pursued may A, not yet have strong empirical evidence, B, oppose our current understanding. I have to add something from the last conversation. So I asked him at the end, I gave him these 4 things without the 2 categories, just the 4 things. And the way I had phrased it, it was a contradiction, I think. I'll have to listen to it again. But he did not see a contradiction. I didn't ask. I was looking for just a reaction, a facial expression to show that insight. And he talks to me about how there's no evidence for string theory. And I assume he accepts string theory. I don't actually know. I think I would know if he didn't. He says there are scientists that have dedicated their whole careers, their whole lives to an idea for which there isn't like definitive evidence. And they just keep going down this rabbit hole with this idea, and they may be spending their whole life on something that isn't even real. And he said, you may be going down a rabbit hole. Wait, is my idea on level of string theory? This didn't occur to me in the conversation. My mind was busy on other things. My mind was thinking about it. My voices were talking about you may be going down a rabbit hole, Eris. My voices were thinking like, wait a minute, but haven't some of these rabbit holes been fruitful? Weren't we talking about positrons or some shit? I mean, he was talking about a bunch of science stuff. I don't know, but I was like, yeah, wasn't that quantum whatever thing? Didn't that pay off? Like, so I said to him, so I have to ask myself. No, so then he said to me, I have a choice. And that's good, because that's what you want from a dad. You want to kind of know what your options are, narrow it down a bit. The options are this. Either you can continue in the idea, I mean, this is Eris, this is what you're going to want to ask yourself. Do I want to continue in this idea just because, I've already invested all this time? Eris, here's what you gotta ask yourself. Do I want to continue just working on this idea, this thing that, whatever, just because I've spent a lot of time on it and I've invested a lot of energy in it? Or, at some point, do I, want to think about, how am I going to make money? Am I going to get married? Am I going to have children? And sort of return to the surface. That's what a philosopher needs to hear. Philosophers need to be grounded. But that's the thing. I think I am grounding. You accept that lawn as the ground. I'm digging. This is so brilliant, and I wanted to just play it off like it was so cool, but then I got scared. What if you think that I came up with this before? Anyway, let me continue. Just absolute brilliance. Am I wrong? Am I? So, I'm digging, and I'm seeing the roots, and I'm seeing it all connecting in the basis of everything, and I'll upend it by digging it all up and bringing you guys down here or something. I don't know. The metaphor, I am sure it continues. So here's what I said to my girlfriend. So there's a part in French. So. Right now there is no contradiction. Before there was, because he was only talking to me on sort of one plane on how to judge my idea. But that's totally understandable. We're not reasonable. He heard 4 voices. He heard 4 voices. With some reflection, which means not the put on the reasonable hat. No. With some reflection, which means the engagement of other voices, definition voices in particular in this case, in response to these voices. Okay? That's what thinking, that's what like if you give it some more thought, that's what's happening. You had your 4 voices, and then you let them be heard by the other ones. So now you got a second opinion. Now you got voices, anything else would be redundant, I think. So after some reflection, which is, exposing your voice system to your own voices, seeing how it feels, and now you got more voices, right? Not just the 4 voices, hey, check each other out, pass your sheet to the right, but let's get the whole peanut gallery in. So after we do that thinking, which is what I did after the call, I'm thinking, oh, my daddy doesn't believe in me. Oh, my daddy isn't proud of me. Oh, my daddy doesn't understand me. And while I'm going through that, I've got voices interacting to the current voices. I'm throwing everything back at the other ones. You said what? Okay. What do you say about that? Okay, great. It's not an intentional thing, not a conscious thing. This is not some ability that I have. We can all do it. It's just exposure. It's just spending time with the thoughts, then letting other thoughts follow them, without trying it, but avoiding the impulse to only hear the follow-up that confirms or justifies it, right? So it's really important. How am I wrong? And so I was wrong because it's not maybe a contradiction. So I said it's understandable. We're not reasonable. He heard 4 voices. Now, with some reflection, we can categorize the initial voices according to 2 different objectives or contexts. Whether we're talking about a true idea or a worthwhile idea. We've now resolved the contradiction. Why do I talk to this? We've now resolved the contradiction and have 4 meaningful criteria of 2 aspects of my idea. Or properties or qualities might be better words there. And then 3. So 1, is it correct? 2, is it worthwhile? 3, is it important, historic? So what I wrote was 3, Dad said a good revolutionary idea is simple and yet explains a shit ton of stuff. And if you saw my video yesterday, when we had the first of our conversations, well, not the conversation, but when I was talking about, it lines up so perfectly. The whole video was about, simple things with a great explanation. So he's right on track. So he says, so number 3, Dad said a good revolutionary idea is simple and yet explains a shit ton of stuff. So A, it must be simple. B, it must have immense in breadth and depth explanatory power. Breadth and depth, trademarking right now as the title of a poem or a book, because breadth and depth and breadth and depth. I'm doing this as though, hey, you can use that. I don't want you to use that, or just mention me. Okay, so we look at now these three properties, potential properties of the idea, and we had identified for each two criteria for the criteria. Sorry. So we have three ways in which we can judge the idea. We can judge three properties. We have three properties, and then each has two criteria for the property to be considered attributable. So number one, is my idea true? A, I think the evidence is definitive, and I can cite a great deal of it, which we have to do. B, it matches what we understand about the brain and how we behave. Not what we understand about how we behave, but what we understand about the mechanisms of thought and behavior. So I don't know whether you understand what I mean, but yeah, so when I look at people's behavior and experiments or whatever, voices theory matches that. 2, is my idea worthwhile? A, it isn't yet evidence in some senses because we aren't asking the right questions or aren't interpreting the answers correctly. We talk about like this conscious agent, and then these things like influencing, but actually what our experiments are showing us is that it's this. There may be a conscious experiencer, a single conscious observer, but which has different states. But at any one time only exists as one set of activity. That was clear. But as far as agency, as far as reactions, whatever, as far as thinking, as far as basically all brain activity except observation, except the experience of those things, but also the experience of those things, is what we're seeing in these experiments. So we're saying, oh, we have this voice. Oh, humans do that? So they have, if this, then that. When they're in this situation, they have the tendency to do that. Okay, that's a voice that exists in our minds. That's a voice that's contributing to our thinking and behaving process. And also, well, bro, there's no self. There's no, there's a prefrontal cortex that, has a lot of inhibitory power. So it's like some of the bigger voices that are like, oh, hey, you chill out. We're going to listen to you. But they're not reasonable. They aren't designed, or they aren't encoded to know exactly how much to inhibit that voice. So there's not this reasonable self that can pull some strings. There's no soul, and we're only barely getting out of believing in a soul. So right now the prefrontal cortex is considered the self, maybe, and that's just incorrect. So there's no self. So we're talking, when we talk in psychology, sometimes we talk about the relationship between the self and the other stuff. It isn't the right questions. And then when we get really good answers from experiments, we interpret them as being somehow sub-mechanisms of the mental experience rather than critical mechanisms of the mental experience. Meaning, there's me, and then below me there are these sub-mechanisms, but I'm the main mental experience, and I kind of choose, and I know this, so I know that I shouldn't do this, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in fact, this doesn't exist. There's just this. These critical, I could have said important, whatever. It is the entirety of it. The composition, the consistency, whichever one of those words means the entirety of the human being. Um, and that if we did want to be better at, if we want to install new voices who can better, because it's all self-governance, and there isn't full communication, there isn't full integration. So the two things that we can do to approach the state we imagine ourselves to already be at is, one, we can install new voices, new if then. If I have this idea, then I'm going to be wary of this. If I see this, I might have my initial instinct when I was born or over the course of my life might have been to if A then C, but actually, I'm going to change it up. If A then D, but you can't, because there's no, you can't just go blah, blah, blah. But we're not gonna, it's a whole thing of values, because the brain does have mechanisms in certain ways, but just not this central, all-controlling, all-knowing self. So yeah, we're not, the questions and answers are kind of wrong, and also we're not using them correctly. So yeah, my idea might be worthwhile, since that's one of the implications, and it depends on what you thought I meant by that. So conditions / implications, and then B, it opposes our natural perceptions of self and man and world. So that's pretty good to qualify to meet the oppose our current understanding criteria. It opposes our natural perceptions, our instinctive perceptions of self. That's a pretty big deal. And man, oh, not just me, them too. And world, oh shit, and everything else. Okay. Well, if true, we can fill that bubble in. 3, is it an important historic idea? But first of all, you said that the criteria was simplicity. Yeah, it's simple. If you guys would just listen to me, all I'm saying is brain's a whole bunch of neurons. It's a whole bunch of different, like, programming rules. You can imagine it. It's a whole bunch of different voices. There's a whole bunch of different, it's actually my dad who taught me this. He taught me the brain is composed of competing modules. And I say that all the time. Well, now I say voices, but before I had voices, I would say it is competing modules. And I'm imagining like just 3 or 4 or something, or a dozen maybe. And I'm imagining, what we all sort of imagine, the different wolves in us. Oh, I kind of want to eat this, but I also want to look like this, but I also want to spend this, whatever. These different competing modules, but actually it's even more basic than that. There's thousands of them that we could name. That we could easily like refer to, and you'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that was that voice, that was that voice, that okay, cool. You guess what voices took place based on what your idea or belief is, based on what the delivery is. You have to sort of backtrace, because we don't really experience all of the voices. We have to, so okay, I believe this, I feel strongly about this. Why could that be? Let me take a look at some fallacies, some biases I already know of. Oh, we have that voice? Oh, we have that voice? Oh, shit. So people like often believe this thing for like that reason. That's not a good reason, huh? Okay, cool. Okay. So now I gotta look. Is there evidence? Sorry, my point here was that it's simple. It is. Just, if you want to, instead of imagining one person in your head, imagine 1,000 of them shouting. And sort of like there's a microphone. You're the microphone. Sorry. I'm horrified by how crazy I seem in this video, but I still think that everything I'm saying is correct. And didn't change. But one thing that I have to say is that, okay, here's how we know that whether you understand. That mic, when I said that you're the mic, what do you think I meant by that? You thought I was like, oh, you've got all these different things influencing you, and then you like decide what happens? No. Okay, so you understood that you're literally just the mic. You have no power. You are just the thing through which your mental activity passes. You just catch glimpses of it as it's going from thought to behavior. The mic is just the mic is the controls, is the motor cortex, or it can be a feeling, or it can be more voice. Anyway, back to this fool. And they're just there's some just grabbing it and they're just passing it around. You know, move leg. Hey, let me grab it. Be angry. You know. Outgroup. So then another one's like, somebody say outgroup. Okay. Distrust. And then another one. Hey, I heard outgroup earlier. We're guilty white. So let's be polite. You know, something like that. Right? That's how you can imagine the self. Very simple. Okay, so you thought there was like a guy at the controls, whatever, who like had access to like everything. No. It's this mic that's just being passed around all over the place. And look at our behavior. We do all kinds of things. We're like, first I did that, then I did that. Wait a minute, I think this and I say it's because of this. And also just these voices, of course they do interact, right? So this one will shout something out, as I showed you in the example, which will trigger another one to grab the mic and shout something new out. And not everybody, oh shit. Sorry, no. The mic is not a PA system. The mic is not a PA system. We are not integrated. When one shouts something out, it is not that all hear and learn that thing. And then, in fact, that's a major part of voice theory, the integration myth. So it's more like what happens. Someone grabs the mic. Mic is behavior, thoughts, feelings, and stuff like that. So you speak something to the mic and the body experiences that, or it makes it to consciousness. Or not, maybe not. Maybe it's spoken into the mic and someone nearby heard it, right? And so that triggered something in them, okay? But the point is that it's not a PA system, okay? So there was just one guy over there who was like, oh, I heard that. I'm programmed to, if I hear that, then I do that, okay? Sometimes they don't react when they should. Sometimes they hear themselves when they shouldn't. Sometimes they got called. They just shouldn't have gotten called, right? Just imagine a complete mess. And then imagine that it's just good enough for the thing to survive on Earth 30 years. Okay, 60 years, and pass on its genes. Imagine these are complete fucking idiots. And they're just saying absolute nonsense. Oh, water, run. You see a predator, approach. They were just okay. So now make some tweaks so that it's just not completely stupid. And it can be completely stupid, but as long as the thing's like able to get up, get food, whatever. And that's your mind. I think that is simple. I think we had a lot of fun getting into the metaphor, getting into the imagery, but I don't think that we can say that because that took a long time and involved a lot, that it was complicated. Okay? I think that would be a mala, a bad voice, a fallacy. You might be rolling your eyes. Oh, that was simple. We spent 10 minutes on it. I hear that voice also. I get that. That's a mala. That's a bad voice. That's kind of dumb. to say, to judge the simplicity of that based on the length solely. No good. I get why we evolved that way, because yeah, there is also often a correlation, but nah. Let's that voice, my other voices are going, hey, no good. It may have been complicated. I may have overcomplicated. I may have complicated it by going on too long. But I'm not convinced just by the length that it wasn't simple. So don't just do me one of these. It explains all of humanity. That's to fill the criteria. It must have immense in breadth and depth explanatory power. Yeah. I mean, I'm in explaining and I'm able to use it because it's relevant to everything. And hey, I'm not the only one saying it. Yesterday, I read you guys the essay. He said, sensation perception is la base. But the thing is that he thinks that sensation and perception are the main thing, because it's kind of like you're this homunculus, this little man, inside the brain, and it gets these heat inputs, sensory, gets these heat, texture, whatever inputs, and then it has this screen, okay? So what's even more la base? I don't understand why my dad doesn't think I'm smart. What is even more la base? Oh, la base means like the base. You can't reduce it like the. What is even more? What is even more la base than the homunculus and the feeds, the monitors, the sensory and perceptual input? The fucking homunculus, bro. Right? That was fine. Did I overdo that? But the homunculus. And then you realize there is no singular homunculus. It's a whole bunch of homunculi that are just smacking the controls. Just enough. Please, it doesn't have to be good. Okay? It's okay if these beings kill each other like all the time. It's okay if these beings can't agree on the most basic of rights or truths. It's okay if they're fat, if they're majorly unhealthy. They just have to fuck, and the offspring just has to survive. Like, they can think of nuclear weapons, have threat. I'm honestly not worried about that. Me, Mother Nature. I just something that can walk, eat, have sex. Okay? Thank you. And I'll give you, I don't know, you've already done a lot of the work. So for something that can destroy the planet, I'll give you a few 100,000 years. Okay? So really, please don't go overboard. Oh, I want them to be like these thinking machines that can take in information, weigh all of it according to, no. Shortcuts, please. Okay? You don't need to program reason into these things. Just something that, most of the time, the good behavior is going to be done. And you know what? Oh, by the way, who am I talking to then? Oh, I don't actually understand what this whole performance is. It's God. I'm God talking to Mother Nature, actually. No, I'm Mother Nature because, yeah, I'm talking to the human genome. Okay. I'm Mother Nature, I'm talking to the human genome. So, yeah, just, keep it. Oh, no, I was talking to you, the metaphor. Oh, okay. But I kind of transitioned into, the forces of evolution, natural selection, and I think that's why we got confused. So anyway, so you say, so you're imagining these people in your head, okay? And if you're designing this human in your mind's eye, okay? You're designing this human so that you can understand what you are, because there's no mirror. So I need to help you put it up on the screen. So I'm helping you design it, and I can't explain everything. I don't know everything. But what I can do is I can tell you it's just a bunch of fools run around. Each one of them has like one thing. If this, then that. And they're just like, and then each one is sort of just grabbing the behavior mic. But I don't want you to, in this picture that you're drawing me, or you, I don't want you to like draw these like sophisticated thinkers. Okay, and everybody heard what he said. Let's consider that, blah, blah. I don't want you to draw it that way. So to help you out, I was saying that this system, it just imagine that it doesn't work, and then imagine it just barely works. Okay, so dumb it all the way down, well beyond academic, well below academic discourse and what you think that you do and opinions and all that bullshit. And then just make it so it can survive. Because me, Mother Nature, I'm going to send it stuff. And if you want to destroy me, I guess so then, okay, genome. You didn't overdo it with the reason. I told you to take shortcuts. You took shortcuts with the reason. But I think you put a little bit too much recklessness. I think you put a little bit too much arrogance, my friend. And that kind of sneaked up on me. That kind of absolutely sort of reckless, arrogant ingenuity. I saw the ingenuity, and I didn't mind it. But now, I wish I hadn't sort of put all of those energy, mitochondrial, ATP constraints. I wish I hadn't told you could cut back on the reasoning, responsibility, all that stuff. And so we have a problem now. And I'm getting tired. It's close to midnight. So I think that was like a really beautiful thing that I did there. And that's how you can picture yourself. And I think that it fits the world around you. Instead of imagining there's this like doctor, I don't know, this philosopher, I don't know, this just like thing in your head. Imagine it's just a town hall. All the worst things. Some of them are good, but they don't have the influence that they should be. That requires training, requires a whole thing that first we just have to accept that our mind is the playpen that it is. Then we can talk about how to get things in shape. But nobody even wants to believe me that it is the playpen that it is. Or that I'm as, yeah. So